It is the duty of the free man to resist tyranny at every turn. Every man will either watch his freedom stripped away or take action to protect what he loves. Introducing the A3, the newest revolutionary body armor from Armored Republic. The A3 is the new standard for lightweight multi-hit body armor. A3 plates are incredibly light at 4.6 pounds. The patented design captures fragmentation while remaining multi-hit capable. The A3 will stop up to M80 ball, yet comes in at only 0.7 inches thick. The A3 is the thinnest NIJ.06 compliant or certified composite standalone plate that includes the drop test. The A3 is the first of its kind, patent pending, that combines an alloy strike face with polyethylene backing, revolutionizing body armor technology by providing strength and durability while remaining sleek and maneuverable. The A3 is the new standard in lightweight body armor. The fight against tyranny just got stronger.
Yes. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It's good to be with you. Yeah. Pastor Toby's not here. I'm sitting in Knox's chair. It's okay. Still going to be a good show. I got Dr. Owen Anderson joining us in the studio. Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate
I'm excited
it.
to be here.
Yeah. And but before we get started, I got a couple plugs. This is how, when I don't have Knox, things get really analog here. So I got a sheet of what I'm supposed to do, not even a computer. How about that? Let's begin with Squirrely Joe. Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Squirrely Joe has you covered for all your coffee needs. Oh man, this music in the background makes me want more coffee. All of their coffee is hand selected and roasted for fresh every day and by the family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teaching and holding truth and righteousness. Ensuring your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. We have a fantastic offer for our listeners. Listen. Hey, your first bag of coffee is free. Free. All you have to do is cover the shipping. Head over to squirrelyjoes.com/crosspolitic. squirrelyjoes.com/crosspolitic. Put that word in. You get a free bag of coffee and it makes them happy and lets them know that you guys came from our show. So go to squirrelyjoes.com/crosspolitic. Also, Red Balloon. Business owners, is your company struggling to grow? What if I told you the right employee could grow your business by 5, 10, or even 25%? This is facts. Anybody who's ever ran a company or managed employees, this is so true. You would be crazy not to take that deal, right? 100%. That's exactly what Red Balloon Recruiter offers. Our personalized source and screen process connects you with top talent, increasing revenue and reducing costs. Visit redballoon.work today. That's redballoon.work, not .commie today, and transform your hiring. Great company. Tell them Cross Politics sent you. They love to hear about that too. So let me introduce you, Dr. Owen Anderson. We've had Dr. Owen Anderson on the show before, but Dr. Owen Anderson has been teaching philosophy and religious studies for 21 years and is a professor of philosophy and religious studies at Arizona State University. Pagan University.
The Sun Devils.
Sun Devils,
Yep.
That's right.
We're honest about it. We put it out front.
That's weird. His research focuses on general revelation and related questions about reality, value, and knowledge. He has been a fellow at Princeton University, a visiting scholar at Princeton Seminary, and a fellow at the University of Colorado, Boulder. Wow, I didn't know about that. He has published several books, including a Job, a philosophical commentary on the book of Job. You and Toby should, because Toby wrote a commentary on Job too. Yeah.
I love Job.
The Declaration of Independence and God. So you wrote a book on the Declaration of Independence and God.
Yep. That's
and the natural moral law. What was your reason for writing the Declaration of Independence and God?
Well, I'm looking at just the wording in the Declaration about God. Mm-hmm. What can we infer from that about the founding? Is this a Christian nation? Is it a deistic nation? Is it a supposedly neutral nation? And then I look at a number of important Supreme Court cases from then to the present that invoke God.
Okay.
And I look at what do they mean by God in those.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. And you're also pastor at Historic Christian Church of Phoenix, and as a certified jiu-jitsu instructor. Hey, man, how about that? So you got your brown belt?
Man,
I'm just kidding.
I wish. I'm in it for the long haul, but in jiu-jitsu, it's so slow. The ranks are so slow.
Yeah, right.
You'll meet someone from another art, and they've been in 3 years, they're a triple black belt or something, and the jiu-jitsu is like, no.
Yeah, right. It's decades almost. Yeah, interesting. Historic Christian Church of Phoenix.
We changed our name. We're Christ the King of Phoenix now.
Christ the King.
Christ the King, yep.
Of Phoenix, okay.
So if you look us up online, that's where you'll find us.
And you're an RCNA denomination.
Yep. The RP.
I'm sorry.
So
I can't get these things right. I just said Anglican and denomination, didn't I? RCNA.
Yeah, so many letters
so bad.
and names. Yeah, we're joining the RPs right now, and the Reformed Presbyterians. So usually we're called the Psalm Singers because that's what people know.
Yeah, exclusive psalmody, no piano or
in public worship. Right?
Yep. Okay. And then how long? So it looks like to me, just reading your bio, it looks like, and I in my mind I had this maybe a little backwards, but it looks like you have been a teaching philosopher in religious studies for 21 years at ASU.
Yep. And
you were there before you were a pastor?
Oh yeah. My full-time job, I'm bivocational, so my full-time job is pastor and professor. That's where I got into. And so I've been doing that. I think it's actually up to 25 years now. It's just been doing that my whole career. I've been promoted through the ranks. So I've got what they call tenure and full professor now. But it's a really good story just because it's within the belly of the beast. I mean, you don't get ASU is currently the largest state university in the country. We have something like 150,000 students
online and brick and mortar.
Yeah, between the two, and just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And the stuff that goes on there. I have a Substack, which is my name, Dr. Owen Anderson, and the purpose of the Substack is to let parents know this is what you're stepping into.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff that's being done on the taxpayer's dime.
Yeah,
because
incredible.
The feedback I constantly get is, wow, that's a lot worse than I thought. Because we all know, it's a university, it's a liberal university, so we all know it's not going to be Sunday school.
Right, right.
But it's like, wow, that's actually a lot worse than I thought it was.
Okay. And then you became a pastor how long ago, though? Sounds like sounds like sometime in your university process, you're a pastor now.
Yeah, we planted this church 4 years ago.
Okay.
So when you're from Phoenix, you say Phoenix, but any big metropolitan area, you've got tons of little cities smashed together. So
there's millions of people in Phoenix.
So we're actually in Northwest Peoria, which is already Northwest Phoenix.
Yeah. Is that on the way to Flagstaff?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, we're a little off of the freeway from there, like 10 miles west.
Okay.
But
yeah. Because I went to Flagstaff. I spoke at a conference in Flagstaff years ago for my previous company.
Yep.
And I flew into Phoenix because you can't really fly to Flagstaff.
It's not a big airport at all.
Yeah, right. So I flew into Phoenix and drove up to Flagstaff and went north. And it's pretty drive.
It's beautiful, Because I love Arizona because we've got all the seasons, but you don't have to participate in them, right? So in Phoenix, you can live there and you've just basically got hot and a little bit cold. You guys might call it cold. But then if you want snow, you go up Flagstaff 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And you do snow. So, I love it.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so you planted this church 4 years ago, and how many people you got in your church?
We're about 100.
Okay.
Lots of families, little kids.
And is this your first time pastoring?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Did you go through the seminary process, or was there a seminary process? What's the process?
Yeah, it's funny because I did a master's degree in religious studies, which they call seminary for atheists, because you kind of go there to learn all the anti-religion stuff.
Where?
At ASU, all my degrees are from secular university.
Oh, wow.
So I don't have a seminary degree, and I'm taking tests for my final ordination in the RP.
Yep.
But at the same time, what I studied was old school Princeton.
Yeah.
So it's not as if I'm coming from mathematics over to theology.
Right.
My degrees are old school Princeton, Presbyterian history in America. So I've written on that theology, and it does make me. ASU has been a good employer in one sense.
Yeah.
Because I've had complete freedom. I'm writing about Charles Hodge, Benjamin Warfield, and then the people right around me are all directly out of like the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. So you got them, writing all the critical race stuff, and then you got Anderson in there,
Baby Warfield,
publishing on Warfield. Yeah. So
wow.
So and ASU's always.
But that's also just because you're tenured. You got some protections that someone who's doesn't have that tenure.
No. Yep. Yeah. Nowadays you'd have to be political about getting tenure. Unfortunately, and I do know some young guys who are Christians, but they don't want to speak up because you won't get tenure. And it's nothing overt. Like if they do it overtly, you can go to court.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of ways to derail
to squeeze you out.
to someone's career. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So your denomination, how old is your and give me the acronym again, please.
Yeah, Reformed Presbyterians, or the Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America. So
RPCNA. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
And apparently this denomination goes all the way back to Scotland.
Yeah. We trace ourselves back to the Covenanters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's right at the time of the writing of the Westminster Confession,
Yep.
the English Civil War, and then the Solemn League and Covenant, making Scotland Presbyterian. They want to make Ireland and England Presbyterian. When Charles II comes back, all that kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
And then the Presbyterians are persecuted.
Uh-huh.
But because of that persecution, many of them came to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these early Presbyterians shaping everything that's being done in the colonies in the United States.
Yeah. What was the denomination called in Scotland?
Covenanters.
Okay, just Covenanters. Okay.
Or Church of Scotland Presbyterians, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, people joke with Presbyterians because if you make a map of it, like you have this all these branches, right?
Yeah.
Breaking off into lots of different areas and arguing about what other people might consider small things. But yeah, we're definitely in the mix going back to that. And
so you were a denomination basically in the U.S. before the Constitution was even ratified.
I think we officially made denomination status just after that.
Okay.
But the churches that were in it they were there a lot longer than the Constitution. And some of what we did actually, they constitutional historians trace some of what we did in our documents to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
That was going to be my question. Is how influential was your denomination in the drafting of the Constitution, Declaration of Independence? You know, what kind of influence was there?
Well, in general, Presbyterians were. I mean, the structure of the Senate and the idea that humans are sinners. Like people say the Constitution doesn't mention God. And I agree, it should mention God, but the structure of it is Christian because it assumes humans are sinners and they need to have a breakup of powers with ability to check each other. The French didn't do that. They thought humans are basically good.
Yeah.
And so the American Constitution is based on these Christian ideas and based on the idea of having representation and having debate. But one of the things that the RPs are known for is that they objected right away to the Constitution, including slavery. And they thought they were very early on objecting and saying slavery should not be included. This is a sin against man.
Yep.
It involves kidnapping first off, and then owning people.
That's right.
So even if you make some kind of weird claim about the owning people, you kidnapped people, which is an offense in the Scripture.
Right.
And so they were known for that very early on, and then being outspoken up until the Civil War.
Okay.
And then also wanting an amendment to the Constitution that says this is a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Because that's what they wanted back in Scotland, Scotland and England.
Yeah.
And they continued that desire here. And so well-known...
What documentation is there to... I would love to see that documentation.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it over. Yeah, there's histories of this stuff. It's now Charles Hodge was not in the RP, but he wrote he was involved. He's a famous theologian from Princeton Seminary. He wrote the systematics that a lot of Presbyterians use.
Yeah.
And I mentioned him just because he was involved in this idea that we should say this is a Christian nation. If you go to any other nation, you go to Turkey, okay, that's run by the Quran.
Yeah.
And so we should have that same ability here in the United States.
And so they were trying to get amendment passed to say that we're a Christian nation.
Yeah. There's still some, and Charles Hodge was involved in that, like I said.
Interesting.
And, one thing he points out is that we've always taken the Lord's Day out. The government is shut down on the Lord's Day.
Yep.
And if we're and that has not violated the First Amendment.
No, and that was like the president's supposed to have Sunday off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he said if that was changed, if the idea is, well, no, that's not neutral, we have to change it and either stay open, 7 days a week or something, well, then that effectively says no Christians can work for the government. That would be persecuting Christians because we're not going to work on the Lord's Day. Yeah. So we've always made that accommodation, realizing our population is mostly Christian, and we're reflecting that in our government operating hours.
Okay. All right. So where did you get your PhD from? Yeah,
so I'm a weird one. I went to ASU straight through. So I did ASU.
Oh, you got your PhD at ASU. Okay.
It wasn't the goal. I mean, you're supposed to go to lots of schools, but I'm just getting offered a scholarship or a TA position. So I did my BA in philosophy and then a BA in history. And then I started the MA. They didn't have a PhD yet in philosophy. So I did the MA in philosophy and then another one in religious studies. And then they opened... They started the PhD in philosophy, and I'd been given a teaching job there. So my tuition would be almost reduced. So I was like, I'll do that. And then when I graduate, there's a tenure track job open, and this is like 300 to 1. Like 300 people are applying for every philosophy job. Like, this is not, when your parents say don't study philosophy, they're not joking with you, right? There's not like all these jobs just waiting for philosophers. But, God's grace, I got the tenure track job. And you don't say no to that. Like, you don't say, well, no, I'm going to go somewhere else because I've been here too long. You say, yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I've been my whole career there.
Wow.
And I like to make it worse. I like to just own it because that people say, wow, that's a long time. When I was young, my dad went to ASU.
Okay.
And I was at daycare at ASU.
Wow.
So I just own it. I'm like, yeah.
I've been here since daycare.
I've been here longer than the administrators who want to change it for DEI. I'm going to resist that stuff. Now, in between there, we moved. We didn't stay in Arizona the whole time, but I just say, yeah, let's take it. Tell you the whole story.
Since daycare, that's great. Now you are in trouble with ASU. Now you're going through some legal lawsuits against ASU.
Yep.
And let's just start there. What's going on? What started getting you in trouble?
Yeah. Well, I've noticed over the years there that it kept getting worse and worse, and I don't know exactly where to trace it to. It seems like 2008, Obama gets elected, and it kind of empowered the radical left to say we're in charge now.
Yeah.
And so I started noticing then. But then when Trump got elected, it was like Trump derangement syndrome. People talk about.
Right.
And so they start doing things like asking all of us in my school to decolonize our curriculum. Now, people outside don't know, what does that mean? Decolonizing is a philosophy coming out of South America. It's a communist philosophy. That's not like an insult. They would say, yeah, we're communists. We don't like the Catholic Church and any European colonization efforts in South America. So it's very anti-Christian and pro-communism. And so I just said, I'm not going to change my curriculum to adopt your philosophy. That's the opposite of academic freedom. So that was kind of the first thing around 2017 where I started speaking up. And then what happened in 2023 was we all get this email from ASU saying, you have required employee training. Now, we've got a few things. Like, we have fire training. We have internet security training. So the fact of training, every big organization does that. But this one was called inclusive communities. So I'm already looking at like, all right, what's that?
Required inclusive community training.
That's the name of it. So I'm like, all right, what is that? So I get into it, and it's all DEI. I mean, there's a DEI module. It's all that kind of philosophy, including it gets into the problem of whiteness.
Okay.
So
did you go through the course? Well,
at first I didn't. At first I objected and said, I'm not doing this. But later what I did was I went through and screen recorded everything.
Yeah.
Because at first they also had a quiz you had to take. So I said, I'm not going to, the quiz violates your freedom of conscience because you have to put down their answer to pass. Even though you might not, like, what's the big problem with the United States? Whiteness is the right answer, right? So I'm not going to mark true for that.
Wow.
So at first I objected to that. Now, one of the first things ASU did was took down the quiz because that's clearly not going to survive the court.
Did you screenshot that quiz?
Oh, yeah. So
you were going in prepared.
Yeah. But because it's such a gross violation and even if you're just a good old fashioned classical liberal, this is racism.
Yeah, right.
You're saying that guy over there, you can tell if he's an oppressor or not just based on his skin color.
Yeah.
How did we get here? Right, from classical liberalism. But then what happened was I started a Substack to record all these things publicly because I knew I'm somewhat vulnerable. What's going to happen to me, I don't know, but I want to record this. And so the Goldwater Institute, which is based in Phoenix, but they do national work, and they're sort of like the ADF, the Alliance Defending Freedom. Yeah. But what Goldwater does, they're more of a libertarian group that stops government overreach. So that's their area. So they contacted me and said, hey, ASU's breaking state law by teaching race blame. Would you like to go to court? And I said, yeah, I'd like to put a stop to this and set precedent for future cases. Yeah. So that started last year at this time, about the same time of year with Goldwater. And it was interesting to see what ASU did because what ASU initially said was, what employee training? That was their media response, right? What employee training? We don't have anything like that. So Goldwater's like, well, here's the screenshots, right? Yeah. This is what we're talking about. Oh, that one. Well, that's not DEI. Here's where you call it DEI, right? So they their thing was deny. Wow. It doesn't engage in at the beginning. Their argument, I loved it. The beginning of it says, anything that follows after this, we don't intend for you to feel bad about yourself. And so then they responded, well, yeah, but we put that paragraph in there. Yeah. And it's like, well, that doesn't clear you from breaking the law. You can't say like, hey, I don't intend to speed. Yeah. And then everything after this for the rest of my life, I'm free.
I can go 100 miles an hour.
But I didn't intend to speed. So that was their next one. And then what's taken the longest so far is they simply filed to have the case dropped because they said I don't have standing as an employee. So what we did was we got an amicus brief from the legislators in Arizona who wrote the law, and they said in their brief, Anderson's the kind of person we were thinking of when we wrote this law. Of course he has standing.
Yeah.
So we won at the first level in January, and now both of them have their arguments before Goldwater and their lawyers have their arguments before the appellate court.
Okay. Right now.
Yeah, so it might take a month to hear back, and then we'll find out where we go from there. I mean, if we go to the Arizona Supreme Court, that's just good because then it sets an even stronger precedent. They get to rule on this.
Yeah, right.
But the argument so far has just been, Anderson doesn't even have standing. What DEI? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So what happens next is once the judge says you can go to court, is we get to put ASU administrators under oath.
Yeah, including the president of ASU.
Yeah. Anybody we want. So ASU would probably try to squirm out of that one and say, no, this is the lower administrator. But the idea is right now it's just a public spokesman, a media person saying this stuff.
Yeah.
And they could say, well, we didn't know, or this person didn't speak correctly. But then once you're under oath, it's a whole different game about what this training said.
Yeah. So you could potentially, so it's at the appellate level, which means it's a thumbs up or thumbs down to go to court is basically where it's at, based off the arguments. Whatever.
Yeah, because the judge, the lower court level judge sided with us and said, yes, you can go to court.
Yeah.
And then ASU immediately wanted
they appealed
to
it.
stop to that.
They appealed it.
Because, I mean, right away, because they don't want to even have a month of depositions under oath. So it's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But you know who ASU hired as their lawyers?
No.
Perkins Coie. Did you know that name?
Sounds very familiar.
That's the 2016 Hillary Clinton law firm that did the Russian dossier.
Yeah.
Like, they're deeply embedded.
And Trump just took away their security
last
clearances
week,
and everything
they just
last
lost
week.
it.
Yeah.
Like, they're deeply embedded in far left politics, and that's ASU's lawyers in it. And I mean, they're good lawyers. That's a high level firm.
Yeah. Now, as I understand it, the president is also involved in some sort of quasi CIA organization too.
Yeah, people point. And this is not like a secret. This is on the internet. There's a group called InQtel, which is the CIA's investment side. So they invest in technological stuff, kind of like DARPA, and say, well, this is being used for CIA or other national security interests. And he's the chairman of the board. And so that is interesting just to think like that's a close connection then. It's not, they would say, well, we're not actually the CIA. We're their investment firm. But yeah, but I mean, the mission is to
He's
do
the
technology.
chair of the board?
Yeah, he's the chair of the board.
Wow.
And again, largest state university in the country. And we're positioning ourselves with the word sustainability. That's like our thing right now is we're number one in teaching sustainability. So what we have is a class. Every undergraduate has to take a class called Seeds of Sustainability. And so I got the screen recordings of this as well. A student sent it to me and said, hey, is this okay? Is this right? And what the Seeds of Sustainability class does is it teaches the UN doctrines on sustainability. It just goes through what the UN says. It's not hidden at all. It just says, here's the 10 things the UN wants us to do, and they're all good things. One of those is social justice, environmental social justice, where we learn about the oppressors who have caused global warming and other people. That's just a module that ASU wants every single one of its university students to take.
Wow. So how is it illegal in the state of Arizona to require you to take the training they want you to take?
Yeah, so in 2021, Arizona passed a law that prohibits state schools, K through university, from teaching race blame. I mean, it should be just intuitive. Like you can't assess somebody based on their skin color. You don't know them. You don't know their background, anything about them. And so that law had to be passed. It's one of those things where like, we had to pass that law. Like we don't know that.
Yeah.
So that law is what this violates. So it's a state law, not a federal law. But since we went to court, right? Trump won. Yeah. And like I think it was the very first day he signed his executive order against DEI. So I mean, they're on it'd be a whole different story if Kamala won. Yeah. But they're on the losing side of this. So I've been waiting from the beginning. My thinking from the beginning was just if I'm them, I don't want to give free advice to my opponents. But if I'm them, I'm not going to change my mind. I think DEI is right, but I don't want to lose face publicly. Yeah, right. And so I would have been figuring out how do I
just get this dropped,
get this out there as fast as possible. And the way they've taken is the exact opposite route. They've kept it in front of the news as long as possible.
Yeah. And so the state has basically made this kind of training illegal. Are there other professors like pushing back?
Yeah, I've got a few, and I don't ever want to blame anybody or tell people how to conduct their careers because it's very
There's
difficult.
there's layers there.
Mhm,
Yeah.
yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so there's people who surprised me, who wrote to me and said, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, don't mention my email, thank you, but thank you.
Yeah.
So I understand, though. I'm a philosopher, so I like arguing.
Uh-huh.
And then on top of that, I mean, philosophers sort of look up to Socrates, and he opposed Athens. And so it's sort of like, if you don't speak up when there's injustice, you have to give back your philosopher card. Like, you're not really doing philosophy, right?
If you aren't arguing,
What'd
you aren't doing it right.
What'd you sign up for? When you read about the trial of Socrates, what'd you think was going to happen? So, and on top of that,
That's
of course,
funny.
being a Christian, all the more.
Yeah.
And my big hero is John Bunyan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and I told you earlier,
Yeah.
because you got
Yeah.
arrested for singing psalms. It's like, man, yeah, I want to be arrested.
If
for
only
singing
you
psalms.
could figure out how to sneak singing psalms into this lawsuit.
Yeah. So no, I think it should be obvious, but that's part of what I've been studying in professors, really nationally, but the ones at ASU is, how did they get into this mindset?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way they did it is with the word inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of a state university is that you want everybody to be able to go. It's not a private university where you got to have a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
But then they smuggle in the idea that some people have already been included more, and so they need to be included less now. And other people who have been included less in the past need to be included more. So inclusion comes to mean the opposite.
Yeah.
It comes to mean we still want to include some groups more than others.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
not based on money now. Now it's based on how oppressed
Race,
were you.
whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so you get like an oppression score.
Yeah.
And if you have a higher oppression score, then you get in.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen the documentation on them doing that?
Oh,
with
no,
the-
no, I'm making that up about oppression score, but I'm just saying that's the mindset.
I bet they have some sort of way in their, what would you call it when you're filling out the application, in the application process, where they start to kind of do
those
some of
demographics
this.
in there, yeah. And,
Yeah.
And part of that module in our training was called intersectionality, which is also a Marxist philosophy, comes out of scholars at places like UCLA, and what that teaches is this idea that you map oppression,
Yeah.
and at the center of the map, the hub, is the white Christian man. All the oppression that happens in the world traces back to him. And I think, although, I mean, sometimes it is against Roman Catholics, like I mentioned, the South American scholars, but it's usually specifically Protestantism. I mean, no, they used to say WASP, right? White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Right.
So it's this idea that, the Protestants came here and they forced everybody to be Christians instead of just worshiping. Everyone before that was just worshiping nature, and they're just friendly to everybody. Yeah. And then the Protestants said, you got to go to church. And
Yeah, and it just messed everything up.
Yeah.
What were, you've already named one specific, what were a couple of specific things in the training that you had to take, or the quiz that you had to take? What were some other specific things that were pretty egregious?
Yeah, well, the other one, I mentioned whiteness, right? So, I mean, imagine, because this is employees, but they also put the students through this. Imagine you're sitting in a class, and the class is about how you can know if you've been oppressed based on someone else's white skin. I mean, aren't you looking around saying, so this guy right here is more white than me, and he must have oppressed me then? I mean, it just produces hatred among your students and among your employees. I mean, I'm not sure how you'd think you'd get anything good out of that.
Yeah.
But the other one, besides whiteness, and remember in a Am I a Racist movie, Matt Walsh had this thing where it hasn't literally happened this way, but it's really close to it, when he was teaching that fake DEI class, and he said, now let's all point to the most racist person in the room. But it's kind of like that, where once you've got the intersectionality, you can kind of all say, hey, it's that white Christian over there. That's the most racist guy in the room.
Yeah.
But then the other thing, besides whiteness, they teach is the problems of heteronormativity. Now, that's not a word you throw around very often, but it means the people who say marriage is between one man and one woman.
Yeah.
They're also a big problem because they make sexual minorities feel oppressed and like they're not accepted.
Yeah.
So again, you have to somehow give more time and attention to the sexual minorities and less to the heteronormatives. But I've phrased that as a religious issue because that's Genesis chapter 1.
Yeah.
And so you're not just like picking on someone's opinion. This is, you're picking on every single Christian now.
Yeah. Did you fail the quiz?
I would have. I mean, yeah. I didn't. I mean, I just took the screenshots of it, right, going through.
So you didn't take the quiz?
Yeah. It's obvious though. I mean, it's not
I know,
hard. It's like,
but it'd been funny to like take the quiz and not do the obvious answers and
see what they say about it.
Yeah, see what they say about it.
Well,
So-
what it says, it still says this on my screenshot, because that's something else ASU says is not really required. Well, the portal has the word required, and then it has in red past due. Right, so ASU is like, well, it's not required, or there's no, well, right there. And with all of our other training, like with this internet security training, if you don't do it, they remove all access to the internet.
Right.
So they
Until it's done.
they've argued,
Yeah.
well, nothing's happened to Professor Anderson, so why is he complaining? It's sort of like, unless we punish him, he doesn't have a case.
Yeah, right.
Or no, there's implied punishment because I'm not doing what you told me to do.
Yeah.
And you've said you'll punish these other training, and then you shouldn't even have the content. It's not up to if I get punished. But
the bigger issue shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that's the Goldwater lawsuit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, but apparently you were teaching. You've been teaching for something like 10 years a class on Christian philosophy or something, and then they wouldn't let you teach it this year.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Yeah, that's another issue that came up this year, and so it takes a little bit of explaining how the university works because I've been teaching Introduction to Christianity probably off and on my whole career. I mean, I teach religious studies, I teach world religions, and so Introduction to Christianity fits right there. And I'm probably one of just a handful of people at ASU who have been doing that class.
Okay.
And so I teach it.
And it's just like an introduction to like Christian philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, right. So the way they tell it, that's part of the humor is what they think I'm doing in there. Because it's just history of Christianity. So you just kind of start with Genesis and you come all the way down to in the church history.
Yeah. Okay.
And you go over what do Christians think. It's not denominational. It's not even Protestant. You go to the history of Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox also. So, but our whole university is redoing our general ed right now. What that means is to graduate, you have to take certain kinds of courses.
Yep.
And so if a class doesn't get general ed designation, no one's going to take it.
Yep.
Because they don't want to just take a class; they want to graduate.
Yep. And
so that's how they got it. This class, they can't say we don't want Anderson teaching Introduction to Christianity, but all of us
removed the general ed.
All of us had to apply
label
for the new
off
ones.
it. Yeah.
And they wrote back, and their objections were absurd. They wrote back and said this class is taught from a Christian perspective. It's too Christian.
Yeah.
Well, it's Introduction to Christianity. I know they hire people in the other religions for other classes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. To talk their introduction to Hinduism or whatever.
Because they'll say that's more authentic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then that also sounds like, is Anderson like doing altar calls? Like what's going on when you say it's too Christian?
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that. What they said was, for example, in the section on the Old Testament, he calls it the Old Testament, and that's not what Jews call it. So we should rename that. And it's sort of like, well, that's what Christians call it. This is Introduction to Christianity. We have classes on Judaism as well, where you'll learn all about the Torah.
Yeah.
And then he needs to have more information about how Christians push the global slave trade. Yeah. And more stuff about diversity in Christianity. And I already cover,
Protestants, Hindu, Protestants,
I just don't
Orthodox,
focus on,
Roman Catholics.
I don't focus on skin color.
Yeah, yeah.
But I already have a diverse class. It looks at everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, they wanted me to teach the class as if, reminding students, don't forget Christians are the bad guys. And so I said, I'm not going to make those changes. Those are absurd changes. And so they blocked the general education requirements. No one signed up for the class. And so my director said, hey, we can't offer this class.
Yeah.
So it's gone now. And so what I did was the last couple of semesters, that was last spring or this spring, but I've been keeping an eye on the summer and fall as well as the spring. There's no class at ASU that has the word Christianity in it. I think there's a New Testament class.
Okay.
None. There's 8 witchcraft classes.
Seriously?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is, I've documented this on my Substack. These aren't just classes about the history of it. Very often, these are classes about how to do it and why it's good for women to do feminist witchcraft. So we start off. You mentioned secular. I joked Sun Devils.
Yeah.
I think we're actually trying to live up to this at this point.
Yeah.
Right? What's going on?
Yeah. So you taught that history of Christianity class. I mean, you've been there for 21 years, so you taught it on and off since you've been there.
Oh yeah.
And then this is the first year after they reorg their general ed requirements, you submit this class you've been teaching for years under their new general ed requirements, and then it finally got rejected.
Yeah, they wrote back and said, to accept this, you'd have to make these changes.
Yeah.
And because they also said, because that's what other departments at ASU, because we have 4 campuses, lots of departments teach religion, they would want those changes. But here's the thing, none of them teach this class. So it's not as if there was some professor who said, I teach it different than Owen does.
Yeah, let's challenge it or whatever.
Work together. Because I would say, fine, let's work together.
Yep.
It wasn't that. I'm the only guy teaching it. So I'm the only guy who should even be at the table talking about this.
Yeah.
If you can show me where I've made a mistake, but using the phrase Old Testament is not a mistake I'm going to change.
Okay, so are you also going to take this to court, this situation?
Well, I don't know if there's anything to be done in the sense that technically ASU decides what it offers. I don't have any right to demand they offer a class that they don't want to offer. So there's no legal violation. The best thing here is just exposing what goes on at ASU. Like I said, when
But so you have no appeal. You've been teaching this class for years, on and off for years, but you have no way of really appealing.
Yeah, well, I appealed it as far as it goes. And then one of the assistant deans told me, I guess we're just kind of done. I told him, I said, the most disappointing part here is that you didn't defend me one time. Like, I've always gotten good student reviews. I've done a great job. And I have no record in all of our email exchanges of you going to the other school and saying, Owen's going to teach this class.
Yeah.
So there was just no will to keep it going.
Yeah.
Because that's the oppressor class. Why do we want another class about Christianity?
Uh-huh.
So now Christianity is successfully removed from ASU, the largest state university in the country, and what's replaced it is the UN's sustainability class about how white Protestant men have oppressed the rest of the world with global warming.
Yeah. That is, I mean, I guess I'm having a hard time with, like, I've been teaching this Christianity class for years, no one had any problem with it, and now you do, so it's like, you changed, not me.
Yeah.
I didn't change.
Or show me some legitimate problem.
Yeah.
Like me going through the Bible is not a problem. That's Christianity class. Because I basically would do like 1/3 Bible, 2/3 church history.
Yeah.
Because I don't want students to leave Introduction to Christianity class and all they know is church history. They've never heard of, like, what's the, Exodus? What's that about? So I go through the Bible so that I'd be familiar with it. But it's not a proselytizing class. I don't, it's not like, it's not like when you look at my history of classes, most of those students leave as Christians compared to my other classes.
Right.
So no, it's a very political thing, and it's the kind of stuff that would be hidden from the public and from parents.
Yeah.
What gets pushed forward publicly is we care about including everybody. And for Americans, that's a very appealing message because, America includes everybody.
Yeah.
But once you dig in a little bit past the first level, you realize, oh, you mean include the people you've decided are valuable, and not include the people you decided are oppressors.
So the Goldwater Institute couldn't find a legal standing to go after ASU on the Christianity class.
Well, Goldwater said you should talk to another group, First Liberty, because we can't do two at once, right? You've already right here. So I talked to them. They're doing some things like a Freedom of Information Act request to see what are there some, because all of our emails are public. Are there some emails in there that say let's get Anderson off this class?
Yeah.
But that's been, I think, 5 months, and they dragged their feet. Like, there's some time period on Freedom of Information requests. This can't be like 20 years later you send the information to the law firm. So right now it's been hush, no response. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, I don't have. I guess I don't know one way or the other. I'd be surprised if someone was.
They're doing a little research on it for you right now.
Was so bad to put that in writing. That'd really surprise me.
So, how do you think about universities now? I mean, you've been a professor at ASU for 21 years. You're fighting this whole DEI stuff. Now you're fighting this, I can't even teach Christianity in my classroom kind of stuff. Do you, are you, how are you, I'm sure Christian parents come to you and say, what should I do?
Yeah, well, it happens a lot. And incidentally, one thing that's funny too is there's that page, Rate My Professor.
Yeah.
After this started, I all of a sudden had these complaints on there. He's too Christian in class. You can tell his bias. You'll see like 25 years of no one really saying that.
Yeah.
I had super good reviews on there. And now it's like, no, 1 star or 1 out of 5 because I can tell he's a Christian. It's like, wait, this seems like constructed. This is not naturally happening. But parents ask me all the time because I'm involved in a lot of private school, homeschooling groups, charter school groups. And so parents will say, hey, it's refreshing to know there's a Christian professor there. Would you recommend ASU? And the truth is, I tell them, look, it's probably much worse than you think. You need to be realistic and know who your child is.
Yeah.
And then also know what they're studying. Because there are some things where you can't really study quantum physics at home. Right? You're going to have an institution that has access to labs.
Yeah.
But it's really coming out in the humanities, which is what philosophy is, history, English literature, things like that. And so they're going to make your child sit through some of those classes.
Yeah. It seems to me that I got 14-year-old, 12-year-old, 10-year-old, so I'm not there in that process yet. But
start talking about now though.
We're talking about now, and I'm in a town where there's University of Idaho and New St. Andrews College and Washington State University. 7
You got
miles.
some good options, yeah.
Right, yeah. And I tend to lean. It depends on each kid for sure. I would like my kids to go to New St. Andrews, but I would say the reason why I wouldn't send them to New St. Andrews is because they grew up in this town. They went to Logos. They grew up in this culture, and I don't want my kids to get comfortable with their faith. So I think NSA actually could really stretch them and everything.
I know what you mean, though.
But there might be a situation where it's like, man, you need to go to, I don't know, Hillsdale or, Liberty or something. Get even outside of your kind of reformed kind of community elements and like get stretched. Like I don't want my kids, and then depending on the situation, like I went to University of Idaho and I got there and I was working with my college pastor and we were doing evangelism and all this stuff and we got in all sorts of trouble together. It was great. It's fantastic. So I wouldn't want my kids going and being silent in the classroom.
Right,
I wouldn't want my kids, there's all sorts of, and I got, there's 2 classes, maybe a third, but I know 2 for sure, 2 classes where I got bad grades because my teacher, my Christianity, my faith, my church. One class was human diversity and stratification.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, surprise. And that teacher was in charge of, so we used to do a history conference up at University of Idaho campus. We do rent the ballroom out, have 1,000 people there, history conference. And that teacher one year offered a 1-credit class to protest our history conference.
Wow.
1-credit class. We pulled the receipts and everything. One credit class to protest our history. It was like a 1-credit class on like civil disobedience or something.
And once
like
you
that.
showed it, the administrators didn't do anything?
I don't think we didn't go after the university on it.
Yeah.
I think we just kept the receipts if we needed
like,
for.
though.
Yeah. So that was funny. She was my teacher. The other class was a senior level community comms class, and the teacher gave me a bad grade. And this is, again, I'm in this major at University of Idaho communications, and back then it was more of a degree in feminism and liberalism.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I had friends who did comms majors and it was legit and it was real. They're doing everything from radio to whatever, mine was just literally feminism, liberalism, human diversity, stratification, DEI stuff.
Yeah, because they'll
basically.
say it's like giving a voice to the underrepresented.
Yeah. And this is back in 2002. Like I had DEI at University of Idaho back in 2002, 3, and 4. It was funny to for DEI to become a thing on college campus. I'm like, that's been going on since I was there. Yeah. And so, but this teacher gave me a bad grade. I emailed them. It's university policy that you got to respond to a student's email, I think within 24 or 48 hours. Never responded to my email. Wouldn't meet with me outside of class. All this stuff it was just like pretty egregious.
Well, and the thing is, like, you and I have faced that because I was the same way. I went to, as I said, State University, and my idea there was I want to go and get the best challenges to Christianity because I don't want to be in an environment where it's just, I'm not putting down other schools, but for me, I just didn't want to be in an echo chamber. I wanted the guys who are making these cases to make these arguments to me, and I want to have a chance to argue with them. Yep. So I'm thankful for that. I think it really refined me and stretched me. I can look back like when I started compared to now, but my conviction was just Romans 1:18 through 21.
Yeah.
It's not just that God exists, it's clear God exists.
Yeah, right.
And so you're not just opposing like someone's hobby, you're opposing creation itself, which is all around you and clearly reveals God.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, I felt I've got this solid rock to stand on. I'm not worried about that. The only issue will be how well I understand it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that's not changing.
Right.
Romans 1:18 through 1 is true. Yeah. So I would encourage any young student have that foundation and then have good mentors. It sounds like you had a good mentor. Yeah. I had good mentors. And don't take for granted the idea you really can't be a lone wolf. You will get picked off if you're just by yourself. I've been in faculty meetings where they joke about how much they enjoy destroying the faith of young Christians. So it's important to know that, they're never going to say that on their university literature. Right. But the professors are thinking that way. They think your faith is the roadblock to where they want to go. Yeah. And they want to destroy the faith of your kids. You're paying them to take away the faith of your children. Yeah. And that's what we have to speak up about and change. That's just, it's completely wrong. And it's based on this myth of neutrality. Yeah. That you can go to university and they're just neutral. They're just there to teach. No, they're not neutral at all. Yeah. Yeah. And in the classroom, I remember going to this one professor in my geology class. He did a whole class on, evolution. I remember going up to him after class and just thinking, this is reasonable. Hey, you did a whole class, and this is why I recommend it. I say you did a whole class on evolutionary theory, and he said, "I'd love to. I got a scientist professor at a college here in town, New St. Andrews. I'd love to have him come in and talk about the creation theory." Yep. And he's just like, "No, we don't. This is what we believe here. This is what we teach, and we don't do that." It's a creed. It's their creed, yeah. And but again, especially a secular university, their sales pitch is,
we want to question everything. We want to search for truth. We want to, and then, at no point would they allow for another viewpoint to come into the classroom.
No, yeah, they've got their own secular creed.
Yeah.
It's just as important to them. And the way they psychologically defend that is they would say, well, this is, of course, is like science or knowledge, but then you should be able to defend it.
Yeah.
And the way I've seen ASU professors get around that kind of debate is they'll say, well, we're not going to invite in a flat earth guy to teach an astronomy class. We know the earth is a sphere. But one of the things I respond to that is, I would use, if I was that teacher, I'd use that as a learning opportunity, because in my case, I don't think my students can prove the shape of the earth. They have no idea. They've just been told.
Yeah.
But there's great proofs that you should learn.
Yeah.
And so if someone challenges it, then have the debate. What are you worried about?
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's just a way to insult Christians, though. Well, you guys are just flat earthers.
Right.
And dismiss all of Christianity based on that insult. And they would never do that to another religion. I mean, that's the hypocrisy involved, is their claims about inclusion and respecting everybody stops at Christianity, or it stops at conservative biblical Christianity.
Yeah.
So that shows you don't really mean that. You don't want to include everybody.
Right.
You just want to include the people you want to include, which is the same thing as every university you say you're better than.
Yeah. How do you feel about like what Trump wants to do with the Department of Education and kind of all this stuff?
Well, I mean, look at the outcomes right now. Like, I've seen people that have been in the Department of Education complaining about that.
Yeah.
And saying what will happen, what has already happened. Right? We've got a lawsuit right now from a student who is suing her high school because she graduated and can't read.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, what happened that you graduated? I'll Google it, because it's a well-known case right now. It's like 3 weeks old or something. It's not too old.
Yeah.
But you graduated somebody and you promised her something and you didn't deliver.
Yeah.
And that's been true for hundreds of thousands of students.
Yeah.
Not they can't read, but we're ranking lower and lower and lower
on test scores and all that stuff.
And so just from the perspective of, if you do care about students, something's got to change.
Yeah. So there's a high school lawsuit right now suing their school,
a student who
or
graduated.
the state.
I think it's in New York. Well, we can Google this.
Yeah.
And yeah,
whatever it is, the public education system for graduating someone who couldn't read.
I can't read.
Yeah.
I should be able to read.
Yeah.
We're going to court over it.
Yeah.
And what if every parent did that? What if every student and parent did that?
What's hilarious about that is, again, so I started off my career in college playing college basketball down in California at a JUCO school, community college school, North Bay. And I was a student athlete there, and it's a community college. It's not even a four-year school. They can't even give out full scholarships for your housing or anything. They just, scholarships me what they could do. And so I'm down in California. I'm a student, student athlete, which is a joke in this world, at a community college, and I got away with everything. Everything. I passed all these classes I should have failed.
Yeah.
I skipped classes so much
because they were probably told, don't be hard on the athletes, right?
Yes. No, they let us get away with everything. I mean, my accounting class, my comms class. I mean, there's classes that you couldn't miss 6 times, and I'd miss them how many times, right? And you fell. Like, you missed 6, you're done. And I missed them so much, and I still passed.
Yeah.
And I was a Christian. I wasn't being responsible for my school. But my other friends who were athletes on my team, I'm sure were abusing it even way worse than than what I had figured out so far. And then I have friends who coached at D1 level, football, basketball, all this stuff. I had one friend tell me we knowingly graduated student football players who could not read. We knowingly did it.
Yeah.
I had another friend say, when he was a coach, again, this is D1 stuff. The head coach would have the stack of all their tests, and they would come in, grab the test, sign the test, and turn it into their teacher. Back
when I was a graduate TA, we had to go through our training to get ready for the job, and they had the person in charge of all sports come in, and they would say, if you've got an issue, you email my office. You do not fail one of these students yourself.
Yeah,
you don't give them a hard time.
Yep.
You make allowance for the fact. I mean, one thing, you're out of class because you're in a game, sure. But this is way bigger than that. This was just, you talk to us.
Yeah.
Like, they're not your student, really.
Yeah.
So, that's that. I mean, the universities are so big now, and most of the time they're ingrained in the entire economic life of that city or state.
Yeah.
And they got national football aspirations because that's what I tell my students. Most ASU students aren't interested in football. But I tell them you need to be, because people know, like ASU did great this year.
Yeah.
That's when you go for a job interview, someone's gonna say, "Oh, ASU, you guys you did really well."
Yeah.
So that's how universities are becoming known.
They're functioning off the currency of the familiarity or the how famous your football program is.
Mainly,
yeah.
There's other sports, of course,
Yeah,
but that's the main one for schools like ASU. And so what they're not emphasizing is what an education should do.
Yeah.
An education should make you a better person.
Yeah, that's right. 100%.
And give you character. Instead, they're teaching licentiousness.
So when you go on a college university, let's say you bring your 18-year-old to, go visit a college and go through their, money walk, basically. One of the, and I tell parents, pick 3 colleges and one of them New St. Andrews. Pick 3 colleges, whatever other 2 colleges, and do campus visits on all the colleges. And you'll go through, let's say it's University of Idaho and University of Texas, whatever. Okay. And they'll take you on their money walk. And their money walk is go check out the school rock climbing wall, go check out the school rec center, go check out the school pool.
Sauna, a huge sauna.
Whatever. Some schools have 5-star restaurants in them, so they'll eat at the restaurant. I mean, they'll take these students all over the place to all the buildings, everything. They will never take you into the classroom.
Yeah.
The one reason why you're going to that school is to be educated. It's not the sauna. It's not the rock climbing wall. The value that they're supposed to, the key central value that they're supposed to worry about is what's going on in the classroom.
Yeah.
But they'll never take you there.
Yeah, just a tiny one.
Yep.
Yeah,
They'll take you on the money walk, and it'll be every place but the classroom because they're actually most embarrassed about their classroom, and that's why they don't take you there.
And it is resort style living. I mean, the old we kind of laugh now, but university was a monastic thing. Like you'd go, you're not
You go to study.
You're not eating large. You're not partying. You're just
Mm-hmm.
going there to study and living a monastic life. Whereas now we've altered that somewhat, but it's gone to the other extreme where it's just resort living and prolonging adolescence as long as you can, rather than saying, no, you should, if you're spending, and this relates to that lawsuit, if you're spending that much money, no matter what subject, you should have a better character when you're done.
Yeah.
But instead, you're going to be taught about the need to be in one of the sexual minorities and express your sexuality.
Yeah.
So,
or hate whiteness.
Yeah. I mean, essentially that they're teaching coveting and jealousy. Hate your neighbor, not love your neighbor. But just like everything satanic, it will be flipped to the opposite. So they don't say, "Hey, let's hate your neighbor." They say, "Hey, we should love everybody." Especially people who are persecuted by the evil oppressors, and now let's hate the evil oppressors. So they'll always put it in positive words.
Yeah.
But ASU has a very well-known honors college, and our honors college centers around teaching classes about witchcraft. So I documented like a year and a half ago, they had this thing called the benefits of witchcraft, and so it's not just like the history of witchcraft. It's like if for feminism, you should be a witch; it'll help you out. And then this fall, they had a class, or this might have been associated with our Institute for Humanities, so it's adjacent, on the benefits of polyamory.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. And incredible.
So, I mean, they're pushing this stuff. Any idea that, you cannot.
And if you push the benefits of Christianity,
no, you would never have
get that class canceled.
Like the benefits of heteronormativity. They'll say, no, that's oppression. And so you would never see that stuff as a parent coming to campus.
Yeah.
But that's
because they won't take you in the classroom.
That and they'll go around those posters. But that's why I start my Substack is just I sometimes don't even give commentary. I just say this is what's happening.
Yeah,
are you want
this
to
happened
pay for
today?
This? Yep.
Yeah.
And so you might have students like you and me. If you're a kid like us who wants to be in the mix and argue that stuff and it's kind of a mission, that's great. Yeah. But if you've got a student or a child who maybe their faith is a little bit weak, just keep that in mind.
What's about to make this worse? At least the student athlete problem is NIL.
What'll happen?
NIL is doing a number of things. Now colleges can pay their players directly,
that's right?
So NIL is changing the whole student-athlete experience. And in addition to that, it's the scholarship thing is changing. So like on the basketball team, you used to be able to have 17 players plus 17 players that would include walk-ons. You get 15 scholarships now.
Really?
You can't have 17 players anymore. You can only get 15 scholarships. And you're never going to have another walk-on.
Yeah.
Unless some college ends up with 14 scholarships and then they have a 15th, but then that person will end up getting a scholarship and not even walk-on status. You'll have that problem. Now, community college basketball and football doesn't even that time. So it used to be you had 5 years to play 4, right? 5 years to play 4. That was back when I was playing. You had 5 years to play 4 years of college.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if it was community college, Division 2, Division
Yeah.
3, 1, whatever. Now community college doesn't even apply. That time at community college doesn't even apply to the student athlete anymore.
Yeah.
So you can go 2 years of community college, then 4 years of university.
So it's a lot more business focused then.
Way more business focused. Now you can be, imagine if I was in this, I made it to community college. I got recruited there. I got recruited to play, and then I get 2 years of college basketball. That doesn't apply to 4 years, so I can go to 4-year university and start all over again. Well, I would have been thinking about my basketball time very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
What happened to me was University of Oregon sent me down there. Long story short, University of Oregon didn't offer me a scholarship when I was done. I just didn't put up the numbers. I just wouldn't.
Sure.
I wasn't scholarship worthy. But now it's like, okay, if I would have walked on at University of Oregon, which I had the option to, then I would have 2 years left, and I got to fight. I got all these scholarship players ahead of me, and it'd been really hard. It would have been really hard for me to get a starting spot on the team, whatever, unless I really got good in those 2 years.
Yeah.
And now I'll just walk on at University of Oregon, start all over again. I got 4 years left, and then see what happens in that career. So it's going to change the game. It's going to make it a lot harder for high schoolers to go straight from high school to 4-year college now, NIL, and then in addition to that, because they're now paying all their players money, it's going to make the student-athlete thing even more disconnected.
Yeah.
Because we're paying this player $150,000 a year or whatever to be on our university campus, and we need to make sure he's a successful athlete. We're now paying him cash.
It's more an investment then.
Yeah. So the school, the student, the classroom experience, there's going to be even far more pressure to make that disconnection happen and everything. So.
Well, here's what I'm wondering. Here's why I don't have any way of knowing this, but I'm wondering if what's going to cause these universities problems. There's obviously the federal money thing. With Trump right now. So Columbia, we saw Columbia lost $400 million. That's going to make universities.
That's because of all the protests on campus.
That's going to make them sit up. But ASU's been bragging because we reached the $1 billion funding level without having a medical university. And so that most of that money is probably federal money. So I've been keeping an eye on ASU. It's starting to scrub its web pages of DEI stuff.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the University of Arizona in Tucson started before us. So I was wondering, is ASU going to do this? But I'm noticing there's links now that go to a dead page.
Yeah.
Or there's wording that's been changed.
Yeah.
But we still have entire degrees that say this degree, what jobs will help me get? And the first thing on the list is advocate. This will help you be an advocate. So what I'm wondering is, besides the federal money, students who say, I graduated, I was promised a DEI job, there's no DEI jobs, I'm suing my university. I think that's going to cause a lot of problems down the road.
Has someone started that process yet?
No, but that's what I'm predicting. That needs to happen. The other one that'll need to happen is someone who says, I took a humanities class, a gender studies class with a PhD, not an MD, and that PhD told me that I'm depressed because I'm penting up my sexuality and it's giving me gender dysphoria. And so I had life-altering surgery based on my gender studies professor who's not a medical expert. Those are ripe for lawsuits. So wait till that stuff starts happening.
How can people follow you? Substack, Twitter?
Yeah, I try to keep it consistent. Dr. Dr. Owen Anderson. And so if you look that up, you'll see my picture on Twitter or X. You'll see it on Substack. You'll see it on other YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I do interviews.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Check out Christ the King.
Christ the King in Phoenix area. What's your website?
Just ctk.com, I think. Boy, I gotta remember
CTK.
that.
Did you guys get that one?
Christ the King AZ.
Yeah, it might be AZ.
Google it. I got to memorize this.
Yeah, Christ the King AZ, maybe.com. All right. Well, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. If you have kids, go baptize them until next week. So this is spring break. Next week, basically, love God with all your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself and go fight